Now today, we're all in for a treat because Michael is demonstrating the 10 most useful things that he has learned in his time at Sorted, demonstrated within one dish. Now, you have 3 of the most qualified chefs here at Sorted Food to judge you.
And also, only my mum calls me Michael, so I already feel under pressure.
What are you cooking for us?
Well, what I'm hoping to do is create you a really delicious lasagna. But in doing so, different elements that I've learned, picked up that have been really useful to me in my personal cooking life and journey, culminating in a delicious mouthful with not too much judgment and not too many F-ups. So starting with lesson number 1, and it pains me to say, organisation, which is something that I continue to struggle with, but the logic of working left to right, having a bowl for mess, and therefore not being left with a Huttle storm.
In this environment though, you sometimes, in some cases overthink things, in other cases underthink things. At home, you have a routine. Is this what you do at home?
Yeah, I do make this at home. I actually use chicken because my wife isn't a massive fan of beef. I'm gonna do a beef and pork sausage combo. And it's starting with a sofrito. Now, instantly, I haven't diced any of this up because I want to enjoy my cooking. And when I'm at home, one of the things that makes me not want to cook is dicing and chopping. So whenever I have to chop or dice anything, I tend to use a mini chopper.
You're speaking to this man's soft spot, aren't you? Using a blender.
Soft spot, not long. Outsource where a power supply can do the heavy lifting.
I haven't crammed this because whenever you're chopping with a mini chopper, it's very delicate work. You can very quickly turn it into mush and water. Overfilling it is a bit of an issue.
More of a pulsing technique.
Yeah.
I don't do that because I like chopping because it's where I have a bit of me time. You know how you disappear to the toilet for 20 minutes at a time? I chop things.
I'm with you here. Remember, this is the things that he's learned and he uses at home, but we're on the sofa to bring the butts. Okay. Because there's lots of caveats to this, and I'm with you. I like the therapeutic nature of chopping, and for me, that's relaxing, more so than having to wash up a food processor. But this today is about Mike.
What I'm hoping you'll find as well is that there are some things I'm willing to take my time with for my own justifications, but other things that I'm willing to cheat. So this is a sofrito, and it's got celery in it. Yeah. But
key component
was one of the most transformative moments of my cooking journey when during lockdown I made a 100-layer lasagna in my flat with James on a laptop, and that recipe that we followed basically said to cook the sofrito out for an hour, and I was like, what? But the difference in slowly sweating and then cooking out the sofrito was monumental. Time is such a great cheat to adding flavour. As a new cook or someone starting out, there was always like this sort of temptation to just throw more ingredients into a dish to make them taste of more. Whereas actually one of the things I've learned is sometimes in the right situation, cooking something out for ages is a cheat in itself because it will just taste so much better.
Mike's right though, because some classic dishes like a pasaladière, it's literally mostly one ingredient, onions, but time is the key.
So another thing, early on, as soon as I got my head around, salt as a flavour enhancer, not just to make things taste salty. And there was a transformational moment after working with you guys for 2 weeks when Ben put some salt on an avocado. And I was like, this tastes so much more avocado-y than I could possibly even fathom. And you just added some salt. That's how, I guess, basic I was back then. And so not only as a seasoning to bring out other flavours, but also to draw out moisture. So whenever I do a base of onions, chucking in a pinch of salt, draws out all the moisture, helps it cook a little bit quicker, but also kind of seasons it as well. That will cook away for 2 hours.
What?
Oh.
He hasn't.
Did
you make one earlier?
For him earlier.
And here is what it looks like after.
Yeah, the side of that pat. Oh,
2 hours.
Okay. Right.
Really, really jammy, really sweet, and the most incredible foundation for the rest of the dish.
Great tip. I ain't doing that at home though.
No,
don't have
100%.
to.
This is almost just to demonstrate how far you can take it. To be perfectly honest, I'd probably do this for 30, 40 minutes, and it will be enough of a difference from a quick fry for 10, 15. There's that much difference between doubling the time.
But this is one place that I always see normals maybe falling down a bit too much. Thinking that you've got to start cooking for your Saturday dinner on Saturday.
Yeah, I know,
Right.
I know, yeah.
And dishes like this are batch cooking, and if you're cooking for multiple, but even if it's the same number of servings you're serving and the rest go in the freezer for another time, batch cooking, invest the time now for dinner in a month, let alone tomorrow.
Yeah,
I
or
know.
just even make a massive batch of browned onions.
Yep.
Just onions cooked out for hours on a Sunday when you've got nothing else to do. Maybe your son's got a broken leg. Do that at home. And then use that in different things. Put it into soups. Carry on caramelising it. Make French onion soup.
You've literally
Bolognese,
done that
Indian.
upstairs, haven't you? You've got
Every-
kilos of onions in the freezer.
Kilos of onions every week.
Caramelised onions.
Caramelised onions and then freeze them in vat pack bags, and it's ready to go into anything I want.
Moving on to meats. I've got beef mince and I've got Italian pork sausage. So that's just chucking into a pan with some oil that's already hot. I'm not even having to fake because texture is another thing that I've really learned. And it's not just about having a single texture, it's about the variation of texture. I mean, Josh Weissman has a book called Texture Over Taste. And his argument is, if you're creating texture in your cooking, taste will take care of itself, because you're caramelizing, you're browning, you're drawing out sugars. And then on top of that, you've got the amazing texture and the crunch that we're kind of wired as human beings to want to put something in our mouth, break it, and then unlock the nutrients. So I'm browning this off in a very hot pan to get those sort of crispy edges. Now, I probably would have added the garlic in earlier. This has had 2 hours, but I'm going to chuck it in now and cook it out a little bit into the sofrito just to demonstrate the point. So, my meat started browning, it's looking good. Thrown in some tomato puree. I think spending money on good quality tomato puree, that's triple concentrate. You can get double concentrate that does a great job. But that's another thing that's, for me, worth spending a little bit of extra money on, because it does make a difference.
I
mean,
wholeheartedly
instantly,
agree.
just look at the colour that's turned now.
I think that's where all of our pick the premium episodes, blindfold normal home cooks and side by side, how much difference. It's, you know, in an ideal world, we'd all spend more money on every ingredient, but that's just not reality. So knowing to pick and choose is really key.
Another tip, or another thing that I've learned, it's not just an opportunity to get wine into a dish, but taking an acid like a white wine, which is traditional in a ragu, which I discovered, or something like a cider vinegar I tend to use, just to get all of, as Ebbers would describe, the gnarly bits off the bottom of the pan, scrapes it all off, make sure that things don't catch and burn.
I know there's always the ongoing conversation about, you know, opening a bottle of wine just for this seems unnecessary. I mean, that bottle has obviously already been opened and possibly quite a while in the fridge, so it might already be on its way out and more acidic, but even better for a dish like this.
Moving on to lessons that I've learned, bay leaves,
Well done.
they do actually work.
You passed.
I'm so sorry.
I
I'm a
understand.
traitor.
We were both there, we both experienced it. I
So-
still deny it, but
And it's not just better, it's free better, because they keep growing.
So these are dried Indian bay leaves, so we'll give a different profile. But I don't know what they taste of, but I do know from this video that if they're not included, you can taste the difference. And the dish tastes better for them. And I'm gutted to have to say that. And then in with tomato passata. I mean, this is nice stuff. I would normally use a tin of chopped tomatoes at home.
Do you know why you were using that one today?
Why?
Because when they were on offer, I bought 12 bottles of them and keep them
Oh,
upstairs,
great.
just in case.
Thank you very much.
That's another
Right.
tip.
Right,
If you've
bulk.
got the space, bulk buy the items that last forever.
Costco.
Yeah.
One of the key things that I've learned, especially recently, I say over the last couple of years, is thinking about individual ingredients, not just in terms of, oh, that's passata. Is thinking about the profile of it. And I think that's like most prominent from when I have been to like really amazing restaurants, almost like fine dining, where they put something on a plate in front of you and they give you a list of ingredients. You're like, I have no idea what that's going to taste like. But they've basically balanced this incredibly delicious, perfect plate of food based on the acidity comes from here, the sweetness comes from here, the umami comes from here, but also leaning into the fact that on the whole, those individual ingredients taste amazing.
As chefs, your role has been to be the best chefs you can be. You're obsessed by food. As normals, we didn't work that way. So I think there'll be a lot of people out there who think the same way as Mike, and therefore will fall in love with food the same way Mike has. Because not many people fall in love with the way food that you did.
But everyone learns in different ways,
Yeah.
and to think that it's, in Mike's head, building blocks of taste, and you have to balance out that almost formula,
Yeah.
makes perfect sense. Other people religiously stick to recipes, other
Yeah.
people just cook from the heart instead of the head.
I think the difference between a avid home cook or decent young chef and a great home cook and a great chef is knowing the why.
Yeah.
You can follow a recipe,
Yeah.
you can work on a section, you can take instruction, but when asked, but why are you doing it? If the answer is, oh, that's
Because-
what I've always
or
done,
because, yeah.
or because, it needs to know, you can understand why you're doing it, and then when something goes wrong, you'll know maybe what's gone wrong and how to fix it.
Thyme going in. Okay, so that's tasting pretty good already. It is sweet. It's more sweet than anything, and that makes sense because I've got really sweet sofrito in there. So I want to add a couple of things, a bit of acidity, and then sort of the game changer cheat hack for me when I make ragu, which is definitely not traditional. None of this is, but Parmesan through the mix. It just adds, yes, we know it's salty, but it adds the umami and it's carried through the dish now that the fat has sort of rendered and you still have some of the oil originally. Let's get the Parmesan in now and stir that through.
The other thing is, if you're going to cook out your ragu or any kind of broth or stew for a long time, use the rinds of the hard cheese, Grana Padano or Parmesan, because it's basically just a big chunk of glutamate, and it's got the salty, therefore definitely umami, and they kind of soften, and you get a little bit of the calcium and milk proteins and creaminess out of it as well. And it's waste not, want not. What would otherwise be difficult to grate over the rest of your dish works nicely in ragus.
So that's where we're at. The cheese does make it taste fantastic, in my opinion. I'm really nervous to have built this up and getting your final thoughts on your bites.
I wouldn't be nervous, Mike. You've made one of the most delicious plates of food ever at Sorted Food, in my opinion. Your spaghetti bolognese.
Good.
From everyone here, you make the second best bolognese in the studio.
The next thing I've learned is actually an unlearning of something that I'd picked up. Fat equals flavour. Kush has always said fat carries the flavour. So you can see now all the fat from the cheese and from the oil originally has glossed over this, and that's going to take on all of the flavour from things like the passata and the tomato paste and carry it throughout the entire dish. And this has been something that has really made a difference to my cooking when cooking with oil and hard spices and dried spices, is providing an opportunity, not using too much, but enough so that you're flavouring the fat and then it's carrying out throughout the dish.
As you said, it's balanced fats in the right places, because oil on its own, pretty much flavourless unless it's very good olive oil. Ghee, got a bit of aroma, but you add in the spices to the ghee, you add the olive oil over something dairy or acidic, it brings it all together.
And caveat corner, you can also make delicious low-fat, fat-free dishes as well. You just have to
100%.
use completely different techniques and approaches and flavour, and that's not what this dish is about.
Food is entirely about compromise. It's about budget, it's about time, it's about speed, it's about ease, it's about everything. And you kind of need to find the balance that suits you and makes you actually enjoy it.
And mastery of technique, because different techniques call for different things. Slow cooking all of your vegetables is the perfect solution here. But quick cooking vegetables in a stir fry or steaming green veg is the perfect solution in other applications. So there's always a but and a caveat.
Would you always say use really good vinegars in this instance and use a little bit?
I wouldn't normally use something as nice as this. I know that this is a top quality product that's a little bit sweet but has that acidity. I would probably use either lemon juice or apple cider vinegar or white wine vinegar.
And there's nothing wrong with splashing a bit of rice wine vinegar into that or whatever. But again, what goes together. So being an Italian dish, the balsamic makes sense, but all other vinegars would do a similar job.
I just want to draw attention to a couple of saviours that I always have. And these are essentially born out of the times where early on in my cooking journey, I was cooking things that were too wet. So I wasn't able to eyeball the ingredients. So thickeners were a game changer for me. Another one that I always talk about is silken tofu. It's almost flavourless, but it just thickens sauces. So in the past, when something's just too watery and you're like, but I can't add anything, I don't know what to do, there'd be a couple of things that I would do. If I were making spaghetti, I'd cook the spaghetti in the ragu if it was too loose, because the pasta water would thicken it and it will cook the spaghetti. I could add some bisto, which has thickening agents in it, but also adds that flavour. It's like a dual purpose thing. Or crispy onions are another one. I could throw through some crispy onions, which would break down and then thicken up the dish. So these are sort of my SOS ingredients that I always have, just in case I get to a place where I need to fix something. I have some reduced chicken stock here. Now, I've made this the way that I would make it at home, but also the use of chicken stock at home is massive. I actually buy it in the cans.
Do you?
Yeah, I buy those cans.
The little beer cans, the pot stuff.
Yeah, because it's cheaper than buying the plastic bags. Stocks, fantastic. Reducing, again, another thing that's worth doing is chucking some of that into a large frying pan and then just cooking it down and reducing it. Again, it's kind of one of those flavour bombs that's a cheat to amazing flavour, but that all is required is a little bit of extra time. I'm going to add a tiny little bit and just see if we're going in the right direction.
Good stuff, that's good.
But I recently read that Gordon Ramsay's new chef training school for young people straight out of school or college.
The Academy.
The Academy. They don't teach people how to cook to start. They teach people how to taste. And I think that's probably, as an umbrella learning, the thing that's demonstrated most through this is that I've actually learned how to taste ingredients and then work out where they go. I just found that really interesting, is that actually if you start with the fundamental knowledge of knowing how you're layering flavour and what things taste like and how to taste good things, then you can learn the technique and you can learn the facts to build upon that.
Oh,
Right, what are you doing here?
Michael, have you made a big cut?
Yeah, so
I don't understand why you're using the carton. We use it here, but I never do it at home.
for ease, I've spent a lot of time in the kitchen doing things that make a difference to me. Making a roux and then a bechamel, it's not hard, it's not particularly time sensitive, but I guess the next thing that I've learned is sometimes it's okay to buy the cheap, and it's particularly better to buy the cheap when you know it's as good, if not better, than something you can make yourself. These are amazing because they're called mother sauces for a reason, but I always forget why. And you can make literally any sauce from a base of a bechamel. Like you can add parsley, you can add all sorts of stuff depending on the protein or the rest of the dish that you're working with. I always forget that actually doing a roux and then a bechamel, you just add a couple of other flavours like a mustard to it. Boom, goes really well with beef.
It's funny, if I was doing this, I was given things that I've learned, making the bechamel would be the most important bit for me, because I butter, flour, milk. I always have.
Yeah.
Always have.
I would say, and I occasionally use similar products like that, is when you're away and you're staying in like a self-catered accommodation, and if it's not stocked, to buy an entire 500 gram or kilo of flour just to make a roux, you're like, damn, or if you haven't got enough milk or whatever, it can get you on convenience there a lot quicker.
So I've got my thin layer of ragu, get a layer of this, and then again, the rule of buying something like this and then pimping it in a really simple way, I'm going to spread this out and then just add a layer of grated nutmeg to the top.
Making lasagna is quite tricky sometimes. You want the end result to be what you think in your mind, right? But you're building it all up and then you're literally throwing it in the oven.
Hoping.
Are you a pasta has to touch and every single side and like tessellate beautifully, or can there be some overlapping?
I'm an overlapper.
I think how you build your lasagna is the same way how you build a sandwich. For me, every mouthful has to have an even dispersion of every ingredient. I don't like missing out on something. That's how I do a lasagna.
Final grating of nutmeg.
It's upside down, Mike. Upside down.
Thanks.
And to finish,
Bit of hard Italian cheese.
Mate, very impressed having all of those tips rolled into one video. It shows that we have learned something over the last 10 years.
Yeah, well, it all depends on whether this actually tastes nice, which I hope it does. It's going to go in the oven now for 20 minutes, 25 minutes to bake and for the pasta to cook through. And then I'm really quite nervous for you to eat it, because if it doesn't taste nice, I've learnt nothing. There we go, lads.
I like it, Michael.
I love the shade of it. It's deep.
Yeah,
You know it's going to have a lot of flavour.
Good gratination,
a lot of orange.
baked and cooled enough to mean you get a good wedge out of it. Cheers.
Cheers.
Not shy on the thing you said. Fat carries flavour. There's a lot of flavour there because there's a lot of fat. It's great.
That is rib sticking, palate quenching, groin hugging lusciousness.
Groin hugging.
Not in the workplace, Phil.
Oh, I like it. Keep going, keep going.
My opinion here doesn't matter compared to these guys, but if I was firstly invited over to your house, I'd be amazed. Secondly, if you serve that to me, yeah, that's bang on, mate.
Oh,
Brilliant.
great, good.
It's perfect. It's full on with salt. It's got some acidity to there. It finishes with sweetness. Got a really deep roasted flavour from the meat. And the texture-wise, I initially thought looks a bit dry. And I like my lasagna to have a bit of a sop and a relax. Yeah, like a fat man sitting on the beach, just raw.
Wait, what are you on today?
But
I like it.
once you get in there and you have the unctuousness of that bechamel,
Yeah.
it just, that gives it that little bit of moisture back to it.
And a nod of nutmeg without it being like nasal and over the top.
Amazing.
That's it all.
Impressive. Most of that went in here, but
It's also lunchtime, which helps. Not that it was, but if it was an exam, it's a massive pass. And if you want to see another normal do a bit of show and tell and show off what they've learned in 15 years, which normal is next? Comment down below.
It's all right.
you set the bar a little bit too high for my liking.
No, if I could do it, you both can definitely do it.